"This is filthy! Are you blind?" Amanda, the janitorial supervisor, barked at Jordan, the new black janitor. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the hum of office chatter. Jordan glanced at the polished glass table he had just cleaned, its surface gleaming under the bright office lights. He frowned slightly, his posture calm yet firm. "I just cleaned it," he replied without hesitation, his voice steady. Amanda's lips curled in disdain. Without warning, she grabbed a full cup of coffee from a nearby desk and flung it across the table. The dark liquid splattered against the glass, dripping onto the pristine floor. Gasps rippled through the office, but no one dared to intervene. Amanda folded her arms, staring Jordan down with an icy glare. "Now, clean it again." As we dive into this story, if you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter their background or skin color, hit that subscribe button now and tell us where you're watching from. It was an early morning at Kingsley Enterprises, a multi-million-dollar corporation dominating the real estate investment world. The towering glass building stood proudly in the city skyline, bustling with executives in crisp suits, briefcases in hand, sipping on overpriced coffee as they moved with purpose. Amid the sea of high-powered professionals, a single motorbike pulled up in front of the building, its engine momentarily disrupting the polished silence of the corporate world. Jordan Carter swung off the bike, dressed in a simple hoodie, dark jeans, and a worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder. To an outsider, he appeared unremarkable, just another young man looking for work. But what nobody knew was that Jordan wasn't just a random job seeker. He was the firstborn son of the company's billionaire owner, the rightful heir to the Kingsley Empire, and soon-to-be CEO. But today he wasn't here as the boss. Today he was here as a nobody. For years, Jordan had lived abroad, gaining knowledge, experience, and wisdom, growing into the man his late black mother would have been proud of. His father, Robert Kingsley, a powerful white businessman, had remarried and continued running the company, but disturbing rumors had reached Jordan's ears. Whispers of discrimination, unfair promotions, and stories of minorities being treated like second-class citizens within his father's empire. He needed to see it for himself. As he stepped toward the entrance, adjusting his backpack, he immediately felt the weight of judgmental eyes. Employees in designer suits threw him questioning looks. Two receptionists dressed in sleek corporate attire exchanged glances. And then there was Kevin Matthews. Kevin was one of the senior managers in charge of operations. Tall and stocky with slicked-back hair, he exuded an air of self-importance. He prided himself on upholding the company's high standards, which, in his mind, meant ensuring only the right kind of people belonged. And to Kevin, Jordan didn't fit that image. As Jordan reached the gleaming glass doors, Kevin took a long, disapproving look at him. A slow smirk crept onto his lips as he stepped forward. "Hey you, deliveries go to the back. Deliveries go to the back." Jordan paused. There it was, the first sign. Slowly he turned, meeting Kevin's smug expression. The words lingered in the air, heavy with assumption, thick with unspoken prejudice. "Now tell me, have you ever walked into a place, and before you could even introduce yourself, people had already decided you didn't belong? Have you ever been judged, not by your abilities, not by your character, but simply by the color of your skin?" Drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. And if you believe that everyone deserves respect regardless of race or background, hit that subscribe button and like this video for more powerful stories like this one. Jordan could have spoken up right then. He could have revealed the truth, that he wasn't just some stranger wandering in off the street, that he was in fact the future CEO of Kingsley Enterprises. But no, not yet. Instead, he smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Actually," he said casually, adjusting his backpack, "I'm not here for a delivery. I was wondering if there were any job openings." "I'm in dire need of a job, sir." Kevin raised an eyebrow, his gaze dragging over Jordan like he was something stuck to the bottom of his polished dress shoes. The other employees chuckled. A few exchanged whispers, their amusement barely contained. The idea of this casually dressed black man working at Kingsley Enterprises, it was laughable to them, absurd even. Kevin folded his arms. "A job?" he snorted. "You want to work here?" Jordan nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "Yes, I'm looking for an opportunity." Kevin let out a short, mocking laugh. "Well, I don't think we're hiring," he turned away dismissively, already assuming the conversation was over. To him, Jordan wasn't worth another second of his time. But Jordan didn't move. "Are you sure?" he pressed. "I'll take anything, any available position." Kevin sighed, clearly irritated. With an exaggerated wave of his hand, he gestured toward the receptionist. "Hey, check the system. See if we have something suitable for him." The receptionist, a young woman dressed in business attire, barely hid her smirk as she typed into the computer. After a few moments, she looked up, her grin widening. "Well," she said, casting a quick glance at Kevin, "there is one position available." Kevin smirked. "Oh yeah? What is it?" The receptionist let out a condescending chuckle before answering. "The janitorial team is hiring." For a brief moment, the air was thick with silent amusement. Employees stifled laughter. They all knew what this was, an insult, a way to put Jordan in his place. Kevin turned back to Jordan, his smirk widening. "So, what do you say? You wanted an opportunity, right?" Jordan tilted his head slightly as if considering the offer. He could feel their stares, the weight of their quiet laughter, their smug certainty that he would reject the offer, that he would walk away in shame. They assumed he was desperate. They assumed he was beneath them. And that was when Jordan made his choice. With a calm nod, he smiled. "I'll take it." Kevin blinked. "What?" Jordan repeated himself, his voice even stronger this time. "I said, I'll take it." Kevin burst out laughing. The other employees did too, shaking their heads in disbelief. They thought it was hilarious. They thought they had humiliated him. But Jordan didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He simply smiled. Because what they didn't know, what none of them realized, was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had just given the next CEO of Kingsley Enterprises a front-row seat to the ugliness they tried to keep hidden. And soon they were all going to find out exactly who they had been mocking. Because things were about to get very, very interesting. You'd think that after securing a job, things would start getting better for Jordan. But for him, the real test was just beginning. Imagine stepping into a workplace where every glance, every smirk, every whispered word was a reminder that you weren't welcome. Imagine working a job where your presence alone was enough to make people uncomfortable. Have you ever had a job where someone treated you unfairly, not because of your work, not because of your attitude, but because of who you are? Drop a comment if you've ever been in that situation. And if you're already hooked, smash that like button and subscribe, because what happens next in this story, oh, it's the kind of injustice that will make your blood boil. Have you ever been in a situation where no matter how hard you worked, someone still found a reason to put you down? Where you weren't judged by your skills, but by something you couldn't change, like the color of your skin? What happens next in this story is the kind of injustice that will make your blood boil. And if you're already hooked, smash that subscribe button and hit like, because you won't believe what happens next. There he was, Jordan Carter, the secret heir to Kingsley Enterprises, standing in a janitor's uniform, holding a mop and bucket. He had been working for less than an hour when it became painfully clear that he was not welcome here. The floors of the building gleamed under expensive chandeliers, polished by generations of janitors before him, but none of them, not a single one, had ever been the CEO in disguise. Yet no one in the building saw him as anything more than a janitor, and no one made that clearer than his new supervisor. Her name was Amanda Whitmore, blonde, tall, a sharp, permanent scowl etched into her face. Amanda had worked at Kingsley Enterprises for years, and she was proud of her position. Too proud. because in her mind, being a supervisor over the janitorial staff meant power. And to Jordan, she made it clear from day one that she believed he belonged at the bottom. It started immediately. "Hey, you," Amanda's sharp voice echoed through the hallway. Jordan, mop in hand, turned to see her marching toward him, eyes blazing. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped. Jordan glanced at the mop, then back up at her. Mopping?" Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart with me. I don't like your kind thinking you can act all high and mighty around here." "You kind?" Jordy just smiled. Because now he was curious. Just how deep did this woman's disrespect run? Oh, it ran deep. Amanda didn't just dislike Jordan. She hated him, and she made it her mission to show it. No matter what he did, it wasn't good enough. If he mopped a hallway, it's still dirty. If he wiped down a desk, it's streaky. If he emptied a trash bin, you're too slow. It didn't matter. She didn't just correct him, she humiliated him, loudly, in front of everyone. One afternoon, as Jordan finished cleaning the executive lounge, Amanda walked in and scoffed. "Are you stupid?" she sneered. Jordan, calm as ever, set down his rag. "Did I do something wrong?" Amanda rolled her eyes dramatically, turning to a few nearby employees. "Did he do something wrong?" she mocked, laughing. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe the fact that he's still standing here after mopping like a 5-year-old? A few employees chuckled under their breath. Jordan took in every single face. He didn't react. He didn't flinch. Because while they were laughing now, Kevin entered the picture. That's right, Kevin Matthews. The same racist manager who had mocked him on his first day. Kevin Beller, who still had no idea that the man he belittled was about to own his entire future. He walked into the hallway just as Jordan was scrubbing the floors on his knees. Well. Jordan didn't even have to turn around to feel the smirk on Kevin's face. "Look at you," Kevin sneered, crossing his arms. "Guess we found the perfect place for you, huh?" Jordan exhaled slowly. Not yet. Not yet. He wouldn't reveal himself. Not yet. Because this was about to get so much better. Kevin made it his personal mission to make Jordan's life hell. He walked through the halls, dropping trash on the floor right after Jordan had cleaned. He spilled coffee on purpose, then demanded Jordan clean it up. He called him boy every chance he got. And worst of all, he did it all in front of other employees. Some of them laughed. Some of them stayed silent. And a few watched Jordan carefully. Because they saw something. Something didn't add up. His posture, too confident. His presence, too calm, too controlled. And the way he looked at people, it was almost like he was studying them. But still, the abuse continued. Because to Amanda and Kevin, Jordan was nothing. A janitor, a nobody, someone to mock, someone to look down on. But they had no idea the man they humiliated every day was about to own everything. And when the truth finally came out, their entire world was going to crumble. If you've ever had a job where someone treated you unfairly, not because of your work, not because of your skills, but simply because of who you are, drop a comment below. And if you're already invested in this story, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happens next? Oh, you won't believe it. It was almost like he was studying them. But still the abuse continued. Amanda and Kevin had made it their mission to humiliate Jordan at every turn. They saw him as nothing, a janitor, a nobody, someone to look down on. But then, one day, Amanda took it too far. Jordan had just finished cleaning the executive conference room when the door suddenly slammed open. "What is this?" Amanda's sharp voice cut through the quiet. She stomped inside, her eyes locked onto the table. Jordan blinked. It's the table." Amanda scoffed loudly, her arms folding across her chest. "This is filthy. Are you blind?" Jordan glanced at the polished glass top, reflecting the overhead lights. "I just cleaned it." His voice was calm, controlled. Amanda's lips curled into a sneer. "You missed a spot." Then, without hesitation, she grabbed a full cup of coffee and flung it across the table. The dark liquid splattered against the glass, dripping onto the pristine floor. A few employees outside the conference room froze in their tracks, their eyes widening in shock. Amanda stepped back, arms crossed, eyes burning with cruelty. "Now clean it again." Silence. The room went dead silent. Jordan inhaled slowly. And then he smiled. Because now the real show was about to begin. What Amanda and Kevin didn't know, what they never even considered, was that their entire world was about to crumble. Jordan Carter had been playing the long game. For days he had been mocked, humiliated, treated like dirt. They thought he was just a janitor. They thought he was beneath them. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine, was that he was about to become their new boss. And then the phone rang. The receptionist picked it up, her voice polite, professional. But within seconds her expression changed. Her eyes widened. Her face paled. Then panic. Because the person on the other end? Robert Kingsley, the billionaire CEO, the man whose name was on every single document in this company. And he was on his way. Right now. Word spread like wildfire. Executives straightened their ties. Secretaries rushed to organize paperwork. Employees whispered excitedly. The big boss was coming in. And no one, not a single person, was more excited than Kevin Matthews. To Kevin, this was his moment. His chance to impress the boss. Oh, he could already see it. Shaking hands with Robert Kingsley, talking about company growth. Maybe even getting a promotion. And Jordan? Kevin didn't even think about him. To Kevin, Jordan was just a background character in his perfect little corporate world. But then, the elevator dinged. And the entire room fell silent. Robert Kingsley had arrived. A tall, commanding man in a sleek gray suit stepped out. His face was sharp with authority. His presence alone commanded respect. Behind him, his assistants, bodyguards, and senior executives followed with precision. As he stepped forward, every single person in the room stood a little straighter. Kevin puffed out his chest. Amanda, the racist supervisor? She adjusted her blouse, already imagining herself getting in the good graces of the boss. Employees whispered excitedly. This was the man they had all been waiting for. Robert walked to the center of the floor. He turned slowly. And then he smiled. Then he spoke the words that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, his voice smooth yet powerful. "Today is a very special day for this company," Robert Kingsley announced, his deep authoritative voice commanding the attention of every single person in the room. The air was thick with anticipation as employees held their breath, waiting for his next words. Kevin Matthews leaned forward slightly, eager to hear what the CEO had to say. Amanda Whitmore, standing beside him, clasped her hands together, her eyes shining with excitement. "For years, I have built Kingsley Enterprises with the hope of leaving behind a legacy, a company that stands for greatness, success, and most importantly," Robert paused, his sharp eyes sweeping over the crowd, "integrity." At that single word, a few people shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their gazes, suddenly aware of how little integrity they had shown in recent days. Then Robert smiled again, but this time there was a weight behind it, something more than just a simple announcement. "And today I am proud to announce that my firstborn son is officially here in the building." Silence. A wave of confusion swept through the room. Firstborn son? People exchanged puzzled glances. Kevin's heart started to race. He had never seen Robert's son before, and neither had anyone else. Whispers erupted among the employees. "Wait, has anyone met his son?" Someone murmured. "I thought he only had a younger son with his second wife," another whispered. Kevin's mind was spinning. If Robert's son was the new CEO, that meant he had already been in the office. But where? His eyes darted around the room, scanning the suited executives, the well-dressed men in finance, the young professionals standing silently in the back. It had to be one of them. It made perfect sense. The heir to Kingsley Enterprises would obviously be a wealthy, well-groomed white man, just like his father. Kevin smirked, relieved. This was exactly how things should be. Amanda, standing beside him, gave him a slight nod of agreement. They had nothing to worry about. The company would remain in familiar, comfortable hands. But then Robert spoke again, and his next words sent an earthquake through the room. "My son is already here," Robert said, his voice filled with pride. "Jordan, come here." Time stopped. Every single pair of eyes in the room turned, scanning, searching. Kevin felt his stomach drop as his head turned toward the last person he ever expected. Amanda's confident smirk vanished, her lips parting in disbelief. Because there, still in his janitor's uniform, still holding the mop, still standing exactly where they had left him, was Jordan. Silence. Silence. Kevin's face drained of color, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Amanda gasped sharply, her hand flying to her chest as though she had been physically struck. Employees whispered in shock, their eyes darting between Jordan and Robert, unable to comprehend the reality unfolding before them. The man they had ignored, the man they had mocked, the man they had treated like dirt, was their new CEO. And at that moment Kevin knew he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Today, in front of every single employee, Kevin Matthews and Amanda Whitmore were about to face the consequences of their actions. They had spent days humiliating Jordan Carter, laughing at him, treating him like he was less than human. Never in their wildest dreams did they think that the man they had tormented was the one who held their futures in his hands. But now, the truth was standing right in front of them. For just a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The tension in the room was so thick, you could almost hear the pounding of anxious hearts. Kevin, standing near the center of the room, stared blankly at Jordan, his mouth opening slightly, but no words came out. Amanda, only a few feet away, felt her stomach churn with dread. Her usually smug face had gone pale, her wide eyes filled with disbelief. This couldn't be real. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. Jordan? The janitor? No, that wasn't possible. They had spent the last few days belittling this man. They had made him clean their messes, spilling drinks on purpose just to force him to mop them up. Amanda had even thrown coffee across a table and ordered him to clean it in front of everyone. And now they were being told that this same man was the CEO of Kingsley Enterprises? It had to be a joke, a sick, twisted joke. But it wasn't. Jordan stepped forward, his posture perfect, his face calm, but his eyes, oh, his eyes. They were sharp, focused, filled with a quiet power that sent a cold shiver down Kevin's spine. Because today, Jordan was done playing games. He looked around the room, watching as the realization fully sank in. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "Wait, is this real?" someone murmured. "That's the new CEO? But he's been a janitor this whole time?" Another stammered in disbelief. Jordan's gaze swept over each and every face, as if memorizing them, and then finally he spoke, his voice calm, yet commanding. "I assume you all have a lot of questions." The weight of those words settled over the room like a crushing wave. Kevin and Amanda couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Because in this office, in this moment, power had shifted, and they had just lost everything. Jordan's voice was smooth, steady, and filled with authority. The room was dead silent. Kevin, still frozen in place, blinked rapidly, his mind scrambling for something, anything to say. Amanda, standing just a few feet away, looked like she wanted to disappear. Jordan let the silence linger, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. Then he turned to his father, who stood beside him with his hands behind his back, watching with quiet approval. Jordan nodded slightly, and his father returned the gesture. Just like that, the room belonged to him. "My name is Jordan Carter Kingsley." His voice carried through the office like a wave, commanding everyone's attention. "I am the firstborn son of Robert Kingsley, and as of today, I am your new CEO." Boom. Just like that, the truth had been spoken. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop him. Kevin's entire body stiffened. His throat went dry. Amanda let out a strangled gasp, barely able to comprehend what she had just heard. Employees exchanged stunned glances, trying to process the impossible. Somewhere in the back of the room, someone let out a low whistle, the only sound cutting through the thick, suffocating silence. Jordan stood tall, unshaken, unbothered, untouchable. Because for the first time since walking through those doors, everyone was seeing him for who he truly was. For the past few days, he had walked these halls as a janitor. "I have worked in this building as a janitor." His words were met with murmurs, shock, disbelief. He continued, his pacing slow, his gaze sharp. "I wanted to see how this company, my company, treats people when they think no one is watching." Then his eyes landed directly on Kevin. Kevin's stomach dropped. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. "And what I saw," Jordan's voice dropped slightly, his tone turning cold, "was not only disappointing but disgusting." "Kevin Matthews." Kevin flinched at the sound of his name. His breathing quickened. Jordan took a slow step toward him. "You assumed I was a nobody," Jordan continued. "You mocked me, you laughed in my face, and you did it so confidently because you thought you were untouchable." Kevin's hands started to shake. He tried to speak, tried to salvage what little dignity he had left, but before he could, Jordan raised his hand. Kevin's mouth snapped shut. Jordan turned his head, his piercing gaze landing on Amanda. Her face was bright red. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a lifeline, something, anything. She found nothing. Jordan tilted his head slightly. "And you," he said softly. Amanda sucked in a breath, her entire body tensing. "You threw coffee across a table and made me clean it." She squeezed her eyes shut. Jordan let the weight of his words settle over her like a storm cloud ready to burst. Then he spoke again, one last time. "Let me ask you something." The room held its breath. "If you had known who I was from the start," Jordan's voice was razor-sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade, "would you have treated me differently?" Silence. A long, painful silence. And then, slowly, agonizingly slowly, Amanda nodded. Jordan smiled. Because now the power was in his hands. For a moment, for just a brief, agonizing moment, Kevin thought, hoped, that maybe this was all a dream. A nightmare. Because this couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. He had spent days belittling Jordan Carter, treating him like nothing. And now, standing before him, wearing the same janitor uniform they had mocked him in, was a man who could end his entire career with a single word. Jordan turned slowly, scanning the room. His eyes landed on each and every employee, memorizing their faces. Some had stood by and watched. Some had laughed along. But one or two had shown kindness. And that would not be forgotten. Because Jordan had been watching everything. Then, his gaze locked onto Kevin. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jordan spoke. "Kevin Matthews." The words cut through the silence like a knife. Kevin flinched. His hands clenched at his sides. His entire body stiffened with fear. Because he knew what was coming. But still, Kevin had to try. His last shred of dignity, his entire career, everything was on the line. "Sir," Kevin stammered, forcing a shaky smile onto his face. I had no idea." Jordan raised a single hand. Kevin's mouth snapped shut. "Because the thing about power? You know when you've lost it." And Kevin had just lost everything. Jordan took a slow step forward, his presence alone enough to make Kevin tremble. "Let me ask you something, Kevin," he said, his voice smooth, calm, deadly. Kevin swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Jordan tilted his head slightly, studying the broken man before him. "If you had known who I was," he continued, "would you have treated me the way you did?" Kevin froze, his mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He had no answer, because they both knew the truth. Finally, Kevin lowered his head, his voice barely above a whisper, cracked under the weight of the moment. I didn't know." Jordan smirked. "I know," he said simply. And that was the entire point. Kevin hadn't been cruel because he was having a bad day. He hadn't been disrespectful because he was stressed, no. Kevin had belittled Jordan because he thought he was beneath him. And that was something Jordan would never forget. Or forgive. Then Jordan's eyes moved to Amanda. She had been standing, frozen, her hands gripping the edge of her dress like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. And now those terrified eyes were locked onto his. Amanda tried to smile, a last-ditch effort, a desperate plea. "Sir, I was just following company policy," she blurted out. Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Company policy?" Amanda nodded quickly, her voice shaking. Yes, sir, I was just—" Jordan cut her off. "Throwing coffee across a table?" Amanda's face turned ghostly pale. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because there was no excuse. Jordan let the moment sit. Let the weight of their actions crush them. Then, finally, he turned to his father. Robert Kingsley had watched this entire thing unfold without a single word, his expression unreadable. And for the first time in his entire career, Robert Kingsley was ashamed. Ashamed of what his company had become. Ashamed of the employees he had trusted. Ashamed that his own son had been treated like this by the people who were supposed to represent his business. And now he was about to set things right. Robert stepped forward. He looked at Kevin, then at Amanda, then at Jordan. Then finally he sighed. "Jordan," Robert said slowly, "what do you think should be done?" Kevin visibly trembled. Amanda clutched her hands together, pleading silently. But Jordan did not hesitate. "Fire them." Robert nodded. "Kevin Matthews," he said, his voice calm but final, "your employment in this company is terminated immediately." Kevin's knees nearly buckled. His world was crumbling around him. "No," he choked. "No, sir, please, Robert ignored him. He turned to Amanda. "Amanda Whitmore," he said, his voice unwavering, "your position as supervisor is revoked. You are no longer employed here." Amanda let out a silent scream. She spun toward Jordan, her eyes wide, desperate. "Sir, please, I didn't mean." Jordan held up his hand. Amanda's words died in her throat. And just like that, it was done. Kevin and Amanda had spent days humiliating a man. Now, they were the ones with nothing left. But Jordan wasn't finished. He turned to the employees. "And then?" He smiled. "Not all of you stayed silent," he said. And at that moment, one employee stepped forward. Linda, the one person who had stood up for Jordan when no one else did. And now she was about to be rewarded. Jordan turned to his father. "My first decision as CEO," he said, "is to promote Linda, effective immediately." Gasps. Shock. Linda's eyes filled with tears. And just like that, balance had been restored. For days, Jordan Carter had watched the way they treated him. watched how they laughed, watched as they stripped him of dignity, believing he had none to begin with. The truth had been revealed. Kevin Matthews gone. Amanda Whitmore disgraced. And the rest of the employees? They were about to hear the most important words of their lives. Because this wasn't just about one man's victory. This was about changing a system that allowed discrimination to exist in the first place. The silence in the room was deafening. The same employees who had once laughed, who had whispered behind Jordan's back, treating him like he was invisible. Now, they couldn't even look him in the eye. Jordan stood tall, still in his janitor's uniform, still with that same quiet, powerful presence. But now there was no one left to doubt who he was. Because today, he was their leader, Jordan Carter Kingsley, the CEO, and Kingsley Enterprises would never be the same again. Jordan took a step forward, then another. The weight of the moment settled over the room as he slowly scanned every single face. Then, finally, he spoke. Respect. One word, but it cut through the air like thunder. He let it sit there, let them feel it, let them understand it. Then he continued. Respect is not something that should be reserved for a select few. It is not something that should be dictated by race, by class, by the way a person dresses, or by the way they speak. Respect should be the foundation of everything we do, because without it, we become exactly what we witnessed this week. A few employees lowered their heads, guilt sinking in like a heavy stone. Jordan's voice remained steady, unwavering. I have walked these halls. I have been invisible to you. I have been ignored, belittled, insulted. He glanced toward the conference room table, the one Amanda had thrown coffee across, the one he had been forced to clean. I have been forced to clean up messes that were created just to humiliate me. The weight of his words settled like bricks on their shoulders. He saw it, he felt it, but still he wasn't done. And through all of it, he continued, his voice lowering slightly, making every person lean in. I have learned one thing. A pause. The room held its breath. The people who tear others down, they do it because they are afraid. Jordan nodded, glancing around the room. Afraid of change, afraid of equality, afraid of a world where power is not determined by privilege but by integrity. The air crackled with electricity. Because he was right, and everyone in that room knew it. That ends today. You could hear a pin drop, because these weren't just words. This was a promise. Jordan turned to his father, the man who had built this company from the ground up, the man who had trusted others to run it, the man who had just learned that some of those very people had been running it into the ground. Robert Kingsley nodded once. But he wasn't just looking at his son. He was looking at the future. Jordan turned back to the employees standing tall. Effective immediately, he announced, this company will be implementing new policies to ensure that discrimination has no place in our offices. Shock rippled through the room. A few employees gasped, but no one spoke against it, because really what could they say? Jordan continued, there will be accountability, there will be consequences, there will be change. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled, because this moment, this wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about making people suffer. This was about building something better. This company, Jordan said, his voice carrying across the room, will no longer be built on arrogance. It will be built on respect, on fairness, on the belief that we all rise when we lift each other up. And just like that, the entire company shifted. Because at that moment, they didn't just see Jordan as their CEO. They saw him as their leader. And for the first time, they knew this company was finally in the right hands. Jordan turned back to his father. Robert Kingsley took a breath, his chest rising with pride. Then he did something he had never done before. He stepped forward and shook his son's hand. A declaration, a public acknowledgement. an unspoken truth. This company belonged to Jordan Carter, and now it was time to rewrite history. Because that is how you change the world. Not with revenge, not with anger, but with power. Real power. The kind that doesn't just break systems. It builds something better. Do you think Jordan made the right decision? Should he have been nicer, or did he handle it perfectly? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you loved this story, click that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.